Hello, everyone. I'm JT Wistersill.
I'm Tom Wistersill.
And we're excited to welcome you to another edition of
From the Couch.
Yes, we're excited to be back with you for another week. And it's another week of talking NFL free agency, or just in general, the NFL offseason. Free agency has been on for about a week. The franchise tag period is past. We've seen some big name players get traded as well. And now it's kind of talk some early winners here. You can determine more full winners of the offseason post the draft, but I think free agency often gets overlooked come the season time because we zero in on the draft, as we're going to be doing it from a content standpoint very soon on our show. But today it is all about the offseason. We have each picked 3 teams that we think have won free agency, and then one that we each have chosen that has lost free agency. So, you excited to get into it today, Dad?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, so let's hear your first winner of the NFL offseason so far.
Now, it pains me to talk about this team, but I thought they did an excellent job so far this offseason, and that's the Cleveland Browns. Mm-hmm. I got to talk about the Cleveland Browns for a little bit. So, they're the winners because one of their biggest problems last year, all season long, was their secondary was bad. They couldn't cover people. They were getting beat deep. So what did they do? They went out and basically got an entire new secondary, right? They got John Johnson III, maybe the best single signing of any team in all. I mean, they needed him so badly to get that done. So, credit to them for being aggressive. They also got cornerback Troy Hill, and then they picked up defensive end, I'm going to butcher his name, Takarist McKinley. How's that? Did I say that right?
Tack McKinley.
But his full name is Takarist. Let's go with that. Takarist McKinley from the Raiders. So credit to them. They stepped up. They addressed their immediate needs in the secondary. Already had a good team. Obviously, won the division last year. So credit to the Browns. So for stepping up and making some moves. So what do you think about the Browns?
No, I really like the move. You talked about the move for Johnson. I think he's been one of the better safeties in the past few years for the Rams. So coming over there, McKinley's a former top 20 pick who just didn't pan out in Atlanta and is going to have a chance playing opposite Myles Garrett up there too. And just a good job by them recognizing the weaknesses you talked about and getting some full seasons in health out of Greedy Williams, and Denzel Ward will also be big in terms of helping them out from that standpoint.
Okay, who's your first team that you're thinking of?
The first big team I'm going to go with is the Patriots. I just really liked what they did in general overall. I thought they did a good job being aggressive, attacking free agency, making some big new moves. The ones that stand out, of course, would be bringing back Cam Newton. We talked about him mostly last week, so I'm going to leave him alone and talk about the rest of those signings they did right there. Matthew Judon, this is a team that struggled to get pressure off the edge. As a Steelers fan, having to deal with him in Baltimore for the past few years. I like his ability not just to rush the passer, but I really think he is a dominant player in the pass and the run game. So a big get from there. Devon Godshaw is their defensive tackle coming over from the Dolphins. He's been one of the better run stuffers in the NFL, just continuing to stockpile guys in that front seven. Kyle Van Noy as well, linebacker, do it all. They missed his presence last year after spending a year in Miami. He comes back over. Jalen Mills, trading for Trent Brown on the offensive line, re-signing David Andrews and Ted Krass too, just really fortifying that interior. Spent big at the wide receiver positions as well. Nelson Aguilar had a resurgence last year in Oakland, unlocking a deep threat he's also going to be able to unlock for this Patriots offense. And Kendrick Bourne, the Big Sky player coming out of Eastern Washington. He's been a guy in Shanahan's systems, been buried behind a few other guys. New England obviously believes in him, which is why they went all in and gave him that big contract. So I just think those are just a few of them too. You just look through the roster, it's littered with free agent moves. They went out and spent money. Oh, of course, the tight ends. I don't want to leave this without talking about them. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, the 2 best tight ends in free agency. They snagged both of them. Smith is a little bit more athletic and you can play him on the outside, and Henry's a little bit more of a slot tight end. But just in general, phenomenal offseason. They attacked it. They spent more money in the first 10 hours of free agency than they had in the past 10 years of free agency combined. So credit to Bill Belichick and that Patriots front office for being aggressive and really improving this roster.
Belichick didn't like his first year without Tom Brady.
Nope.
So he decided, okay, we're going to be aggressive and go get people. I don't want to lose anymore. So credit to him for doing it.
Absolutely. So who's your second winner of the offseason so far?
I struggled with this second team. I went back and forth about 3 different teams. And where I landed, JT, was the Denver Broncos. Ooh. And here's why. They didn't make a lot of moves so far this offseason, but they've had some key ones. They locked up safety Justin Simmons for a long time. Needed to do that. He's one of the premier defenders in the league, right? He's the highest paid safety now in all of football.
Well deserved.
They also re-signed Shelby Harris. Again, another great player. Obviously need him. A great interior player. One had the best season. They went out and got Ronald Darby. Okay, they needed him. Needed a corner. They went out aggressively, got him, and then the signing that's probably the best from outside. They got Kyle Fuller, the corner,
huge
to come there because after the Bears released him. So all of a sudden, in a division that the Broncos are in, where if they don't have a great defense, they're not even in the discussion because offensively they can't match the firepower of some of those teams. So I love what they did. I think their defense is going to be much better. I think they did as good as they possibly actually could in free agency. So what's your thought of the Broncos?
I thought Denver killed it, and actually going even, like if we're going to talk about this past year, I was really high on Denver. I originally picked them to make the postseason, and then the injuries piled up, specifically Von Miller. I instantly backed off on when that happened. But this roster is loaded, got more loaded in free agency because of those additions, mainly to the defensive side. They went offense heavy in the draft, and they still got the draft to upgrade this roster again. So honestly, my biggest takeaway for Denver in general is this is on Drew Lock. Like, he's just got almost everything laid out there for him. So I'm really interested and excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, JT, who's your second team?
I'm going to stay in the AFC East and go with the Jets. For me, the Jets, I thought they had a really good free agency. It's been a good offseason for them. They bring over Robert Saleh from the 49ers. I was stunned he was passed up last year for a head coaching opportunity. Just seems like the next young coach. But he's different from other young coaches because he's a defensive-minded guy. But he really gets after it. Love his energy. We've seen the compilations of him before. The coaches having to hold him back. And that is not an easy man to hold back either.
No.
So credit to those guys. But going out in free agency, let's talk about what they did. They weren't really active in the trades before, so this is where they really made their money. Bringing over Corey Davis, the former 5th overall pick out of Western Michigan. He really started to show flashes this past year in that Tennessee offense, finally putting it together, being the route runner. I think he's going to take that step and be the number 1 receiver in New York that Sam Darnold needs. Also, speaking of pass catchers, bringing in Tyler Kroft, a reliable tight end for the Bills these past few years, coming over as well. And the biggest thing, of course, that comes over when you bring Saleh is they were going to attack the defensive end. When you look at the past few years, this team's ability to get after the pass rusher, it's been extremely underwhelming, especially from those edge spots. They just lacked talent at those positions. So bringing in a guy like Carl Lawson from Cincinnati, a guy who he just needs to stay healthy, could easily be a double-digit sack guy, I thought it was a great move. He's still a young player, still developing, and when you get a coach like Saleh, he can bring him along as well. Also, Sheldon Rankin signed a 2-year deal with them as well, one of the more underrated players. He was kind of lost in the shuffle with that Saints defensive line because of all the depth they had along there. So a great move bringing him in as well. And Jared Davis, low-value signing from the Lions. I think it's a low-risk, high-reward move there too. And even bringing in some of these other smaller-name free agent guys like LaMarcus Joyner to pair next to Marcus May after re-signing May. That's a solid safety combination. I think the Jets, depending on the kind of draft they have, and we're going to talk about the difficult decision of Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson they're going to have to face, but I think they're off to a great new start under Saleh because of these home runs they've hit in free agency.
Yeah, you hit on what I was going to say right there at the end, which is regardless of who's under center, they've at least surrounded him with some good players. And so, we'll wait and see what the draft brings. Or is it going to be Darnold? Is it going to be Wilson under center next fall? But, in some ways, it almost makes it easier now to draft Wilson.
Yes.
Because you've now surrounded him with talent. And so you can hopefully, on draft night, trade Sam Darnold.
Yep.
For a great draft pick there somewhere. So to somebody that wants a quarterback. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we are definitely going to talk about that coming up in a future episode. But you got your final winner, Dad. What's it going to be?
My final winner, I went with my gut on their final situation. And I picked the Washington football team.
Okay, I like it.
And here's why. Okay. Curtis Samuel. Okay, I love wide receiver Curtis Samuel. Playmaker, fast. I mean, in the super fast category, right? He's a playmaker. Now, with Terry McLaurin, they've got a great match there at that. They also have, let's not forget about their last year's draft pick, Antonio Gibson, college wide receiver, turned running back, also makes plays out of the backfield. They are great. So they've got some unbelievable space eaters there now. Now, let's talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick coming over, okay? He's Yeah, he's going to be feast or famine, but he's more feast than famine, especially because he doesn't have to do a ton here, I think. I think he'll spread the field out, throw the ball all over the place. I think they're really going to be dangerous. So I give them some credit for upgrading their offense significantly. And oh, by the way, they added arguably the best cornerback out there in William Jackson III. Mm-hmm. So both sides of the ball, Ron Rivera, you got to be a fan of his. He just finds ways to get a competitive product on the field. Right now, as I look at that, to me, they're going to win the NFC East next year. Mark it down, Washington football team. There you go. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I really liked Washington. Obviously, you watched last week's episode From the Couch because he talked about Curtis Samuel right there, who was my underrated guy right there. I
like him.
And the guy that I went back and forth for including that final spot in my underrated guys was William Jackson. So a huge fan of his game. Did believe he was the best on the market. I'm not as high on the Ryan Fitzpatrick signing personally. I think it could work, but I would have rather seen them draft a quarterback, but they're only paying him $10 million, so it's really cheap for quarterback money. So I'm excited to see what they can do, and because of guys like Gibson and that strong offensive line, they're going to have success there. So I agree. I think right now they have to be the front runner for that division.
Yep, go for it. So, okay, third one, JT, what do you got?
The Arizona Cardinals, and this is a team that's really won the offseason so far, especially for what they've done in the trade market and signed some of those early free agent guys. The biggest name, of course, being J.J. Watt. All the rumors out there about where Watt's going to end up, and all of a sudden he goes to Arizona, and him and Chandler Jones are going to be a fantastic pairing along that defensive line. The other big thing they've done outside of free agency is trading. They traded for Rodney Hudson. They got a steal for him, too. They just traded they only traded a third-round pick for this year for a guy who's arguably one of the three best centers in the NFL. Yep. Hudson's just been steady, solid there. He's a perfect leader. You want that leadership with a young quarterback like Kyler back there, too. They struggled to draft guys and just in general put together a solid offensive line around Kyler. So I think this is a great step forward in protecting him. Re-signing their right tackle, Kelvin Beachum, was also a nice move by them. And we want to upgrade the weapons on the outside. Larry Fitzgerald, he's an incredible career, but it's obviously coming to an end. Bringing in A.J. Green with only a $6 million cap hit, too. He dealt with some injuries. First time ever with a new quarterback last year. Season coming off a season-ending injury the year before, too. I just think a lot of things went wrong for A.J., and he's still got some really good football left. And he's obviously not going to be the number one receiver there for the first time in his career with DeAndre Hopkins there as well. So those are the biggest name guys, but even bringing in back Marcus Golden, really solid edge guy for them too. Robert Alford, a nice corner on the edge as well. So I just really think they got the big name guys. They signed some of the smaller name guys. The NFC West is loaded, and because of the moves the Cardinals made, they're going to be a factor in it for one of the second or third place teams in that division. I still think it's the Rams division, but I loved what the Cardinals did.
Yeah, I mean, I give him credit for getting Watt, even though he's not the player maybe he once was, but he's a difference maker for their defense. No, I give him a lot of credit for being aggressive, and sometimes that's what it takes to move up in your division. So we'll see what happens there with the Cards.
No, absolutely. And we hit on the winners, but as everything in life, there are winners and losers. And this one, we each picked the one loser. So who is your one loser of the offseason so far?
So I'm going to talk about a team that you know quite well, JT, as being the biggest loser. And here's why. They were this close to the Super Bowl last year. They were this close to the Super Bowl, right? Will Fuller's out there. I mean, maybe we take a chance on Will Fuller, right? Mm-hmm. We could use a wide receiver. Maybe, we've got one great one, but we could have somebody else to throw the ball to. Might be good because we have arguably the greatest quarterback or in the top three ever. But do the Green Bay Packers do it? No, they let Will Fuller walk to the Dolphins for $10 million. Mm-hmm. And so what have they done so far, the Packers? They've done nothing. Okay, they re-signed Aaron Jones. Okay, great. But when you have a window that is closing rapidly on one of the greatest careers in NFL history, why not give him some weapons? You screwed up the draft last year, so you had a chance to add, I believe, a difference maker on the offensive side of the ball and bring in Will Fuller. Nope, not going to do it. Who knows? They'll probably draft another quarterback in the first round for all I know. But I'm very disappointed in the Packers. Your window is closing rapidly. I know you thought I was going to talk about the Vikings.
I did.
No, the Vikings were not that bad. But the Packers, again, who I know you know well, I was extremely disappointed. And they've done nothing to prove to me that they won't do any. The best they can do again is losing the NFC Championship because they didn't add a weapon that they needed on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, they need Bakatari to stay healthy.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is until you have more weapons, Aaron Rodgers is gonna be struggling to win the biggest games right now. There's my thought. Yeah. What do you think about the Pack?
I love that move, that team you picked right there. And like you said, it just caught me so.
You love that team?
I was all flustered because I thought you were going for out my Vikings. And I was going to get shocked. So, but like you choose Aaron Jones over Corey Linsley, because that was one of my guys last week. I thought I didn't get that either. You signed Kevin King back. We saw him get burned awfully at the end of the first half. It's rough. It's almost like the Packers GM is just dead set on like he just won't admit he's wrong, right? He's just like, my way works. I don't need receivers. It's going to work my way. So he won't even sign these guys for like the bare minimum or something. So it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. So anyway, very disappointed. Yeah. Okay, who's your loser?
I'm going to stay in the NFC North and go with the Bears. The Bears.
Easy choice here.
I mean, the biggest thing is Andy Dalton. It's probably the worst signing in free agency in my opinion. And we talked about last week the hopes of Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. You settle for Andy Dalton, but it's what you have to give up to get him. I mean, you let go of a guy like Kyle Fuller, who's your best corner. I mean, corners are so valuable in today's NFL, and they're hard to find. And you swapped him out for a guy who last year was a backup quarterback. Cincinnati moved off him a few years ago for a reason. I don't think anyone expects Dalton to walk in and be a top 20 quarterback in the NFL next year. And I understand they got him for only a cheap contract like that, but just to move off of that, there's rumors they're going to have to move off Akeem Hicks as well. Hicks is one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, so losing him would be a massive blow to this team too. And even they just seem to really prioritize offense, which I know it felt like they're a long way off from contending, but this team still made the playoffs because of the caliber of this defense. And It seems like they're just like, offense. Like even just something like Desmond Trufant. It's a fine signing as your number 2 corner, but we saw as a number 1 corner last year in Detroit. That just didn't work out. They franchise tagged Allen Robinson is probably the one good thing they did, and honestly, I think they should trade him and try to find some value for him because I don't think Robinson wants to be there. Everyone they signed, there's no one you like, this player is going to be great for us. Mario Edwards, he's solid. He's a value guy. Jermaine Ifedi, he's a fine guard, but he also gets beat sometimes. Like, there's just no really difference makers here. The Bears definitely got worse. Moving off Trubisky's great, but you got 2 guys who were top-end backup quarterbacks in Andy Dalton and Nick Foles fighting for your spot right here, and it's just really interesting to me because it seems like they're having to slice away their defense to settle for a mediocre offense.
Yeah, there's just no way to sugarcoat the Bears. It's a dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. I found a note about the Bears because I figured they'd come up that I was going to read to you. It says, they had to release Kyle Fuller to clear cap room for Andy Dalton, the same player they could have had for $3 million last year when they instead chose to trade a 4th-round pick to the Jags for Nick Foles. So that is the definition of stupidity, right? Mm-hmm. I passed on him last year because I didn't think it was worth it, but now I'm going to give up more to get him now because he's now more worth it. Yeah. That's not true. So sad what happened there, but the Bears, not good. Not good at all.
Absolutely. I mean that's a great point you bring up right there too. We saw Dalton with this loaded supporting cast in Dallas. Yes, the offensive line was in shambles, but it didn't. I don't think many fans were watching Andy Dalton and going, you know what? He revitalized his career right there. He's going to go back out there. So that just didn't happen. Before we go, quick thoughts on your Steelers free agency so far?
Non-participation award goes to Pittsburgh Steelers. We're gonna do what we do every year around this time of year. We're gonna let some of our best players leave, and we're going to head towards the draft. The good thing is the Steelers front office, Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, are really good at the draft. And so I feel good about that, but it's a non-participation award like it is every year. We're not going to spend a lot of money on free agent signings. How about your Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, hey, at least for you guys, you actually brought back Juju, which I give you credit there, but for my Vikings, Patrick Peterson, I was thrilled with the signing. I was shocked. Maybe a slight overpay, but I'm hoping he revitalizes his career, as we've seen some corners do under Mike Zimmer. Talk about Dalvin Tomlinson moving in that defensive tackle spot. He's been so awesome for the Giants those past few years. And their big free agent signing of last offseason was Michael Pierce, and he's finally going to be able to come over and man that nose tackle spot for a team that struggled in the run defense. Still $11 million in cap space due to some crazy, wacky restructures. Just trying to understand the NFL and the salary cap is just a doozy, honestly. So it's really interesting, but I'm excited for the future. You're excited for the draft because that's what you guys always do. And either way, the NFL is always a roller coaster, and it's been fun to monitor the offseason. so far. So the next time we are back on the couch, we will be hitting the NFL draft, talking about a few different things relating to that as it does start to ramp up. And I believe we're coming up. I should have checked the date, but we got to be coming up on a year from the couch now.
Yeah, probably right. We'll have to have a little cake next time.
Yes,
maybe, as we come around.
I do love some cake. But we thank you for always as joining us here on another edition of
From the Couch.
We'll see you next time.